There was definitely a vent there, though.
Ooh.
Oi.
It is the lights, isn't it?
We should just do this in the dark.
Welcome to Brand Bridge, a podcast about how brand can form a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. RBL's leadership team is here with me to chat about the difference brand has made in the businesses that they've worked in and the transformational differences that it's made for our clients. So I just wanted to welcome to the podcast, Adam, Andrew, and Karen. Thanks for joining. And I wanted to start off just asking you a little bit about your background and where you've worked previously and how you got interested in the discipline of brand. When you could have focused on any aspect of marketing, how did you end up in brand specifically? So I hope that's not too broad or big of a question to start off with. You can take one piece of that or all of it, but just a little bit about yourselves, your background, and how you ended up at RBL. So let's start to my right with Adam.
Thanks, Jack. So I'm Adam. I'm creative director here at RBL, and I've been here for 8 years. So I started in-house 20 years ago, in-house, just happy to be being a creative. And then I worked my way through several positive change agencies in London. And what I liked about your question was, why did you end up at brand? And no one's ever asked me that before, but it's a really good question. And the simple answer, I think, is that brand, as a creative, all the places I've worked before, you enjoy the challenge, you enjoy working within the brief, but you always want to question the brief. And you always want to just get a little bit more into things. And ultimately, if you keep chasing that rabbit hole, if you just keep trying to get further on the brief, further into things, what you're really doing is working your way up towards the brand. The brand is where you lay the foundations for everyone else who comes after you. And I think that's why I wanted to and naturally ended up working in brand.
Right. That's very interesting. Thanks, Adam. Andrew.
Hi, Jack. So Andrew Milton, I'm the Operations and Planning Director here at RBL. I've been with the organisation 3 years. Now, I was actually their client for a number of years when I ran the brand and marketing team at Severn Trent. So looking back at my career, all of my career to date has actually been client side. So working in marketing teams, running CRM teams, so really almost at the pointy end of marketing, if you like. But throughout my career, what's really interested me is the role that brand plays in actually connecting marketing with the organisation and business strategy. So ultimately, the conclusion I reached a few years ago was that actually brand really was the most important thing, but it was a thing that doesn't exist in its own. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It actually has to be there to power all the decisions that a business makes, particularly about its marketing, its campaigns, and how it expresses itself.
Yeah, great. Wow. Seeing some similarities and patterns. But Karen.
Hi, Jack. Thank you. Karen Newbold, I'm Director of Growth or Growth Director at RBL. I've also been at RBL for almost 8 years, 7 of which were spent in client services. So wow. That's really my core area of expertise, if you like, or area of experience. I've had a very diverse career. I didn't start out in this world, and I'm not going to say where I did start out. It doesn't really matter. But I guess for me, the first time that brand really signified anything was when I worked for an agency who provided a service to BMW. BMW owned Mini, MG and the Rover brands at the time. And it was so refreshing to be 7 years into my career talking to friends and family about organisations that were known and recognised. And I suppose that's the conventional view of brand, is that whenever you say a name, people know exactly who they are and what they stand for. So that was quite exciting. Fast forward 20 odd years, I think for me, what I've really enjoyed at RBL is understanding the diversity and the breadth of what brand means. And the benefit, I think, is creating that alignment within an organization, so everybody knows the direction in which they're going, how everybody can pull together and achieve goals and objectives. So for me, it's that alignment within the organization to then deliver that consistently outside the organization.
I wanted to use this podcast episode as a way to introduce you, the leadership team of RBL, and then also to answer the question, can brand transform an organization? And so to get to that question, because that's something that you hear promised by agencies, companies offering different services, there's promising transformation is relatively common, but is it practical? Is it realistic that brand could transform an organization? So that's what I wanted to get to throughout the course of the conversation.
Okay.
And so I wanted to start by asking you, when do companies typically come to RBL? Is that what they're looking for, or is that what they need?
So they come to RBL at a moment of change, and that's either change within their own organisation, so it could be a change in leadership that is going to happen in 12 months' time. It could be a change in the structure of the organisation, or it could be external forces, a more competitive environment. So they need to take a look at themselves to understand what needs to change so that they can become successful in that environment. So it's always centred around change. They know they need to do something. I think transformation can be a big word. It might come across as being an imposing word. But when I think about transformation, I think about success and what success looks like. And it looks different for every single client that we work with. And I've got an example that I will come back to later on of one of our smaller clients and the transformation that we were able to help them with.
Right. Great. Thank you.
And I think so. Yeah, bang on with the change. I think that's something that really drives a lot of our clients when they first contact us, and sometimes they're not quite sure about what that change really is. And
true.
And often, I don't think it's in their minds this thing about transformation or transformative, but I think they discover that through the process.
Okay.
Often expectations, I think, are probably lower in terms of they know that something needs to change. They think that brand can play a part in enabling that change.
Yeah.
But it's only actually through, I think, going through that whole process that many of them really start to understand about how transformative that whole change in a brand can actually be.
I think they know that something needs to be different, don't they?
Yeah.
Because either they are trying to halt a negative pattern that is happening or improve something. So they know something needs to be different. They don't always know what that point of difference is or should be. And that's how we help them, by discovering what that is and working with them to listen to the key challenges and develop our insights to be able to help move them forward and take them on this journey.
Nice. Any thoughts, Adam?
Well, lots, but it's just, it was the question threw me a little bit, right? In terms of so obviously, we argue a lot that at certain points at certain moments of change, you are going to need to adapt.
Yeah.
Right. And we can help you with that adaptation. But the world is always changing, right? So it's almost like the premise of the question is, so can a brand drive change? Why wouldn't a brand drive change, right? If you're starting from, if it's starting from a point of something needs to change, that's why you have come to us. It's like that's what the whole role of it is.
So you're saying change is the status quo, and
Almost.
it's just about whether
Yes.
you're
whether
keeping up with
yes, exactly. Change is the status quo, and as Ree often puts it, are you getting swept away or are you riding the wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And brand is here to help you ride the wave or start the wave.
Right. Ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? When brand doesn't just drive a change within your organization, but it's here to say, right. And that's when you get back to purpose. What are we here to do?
Right. And so if you had to bucket it, would most organizations come reacting to change or proactively trying to start it?
That's good. That would be a great question to have when we had a broader group of people. I think our clients currently are generally reactive.
Okay.
Something has changed in their marketplace which they need to adapt to, or the classic ones of, okay, we've had a change of management, or we've written a new 5-year strategy, or regulation has changed and we need to do something different.
Yep. A new strategy is a great one, and it might be a slight digression for this particular podcast, but it's really interesting the number of clients who come to us because they've written a new 5-year strategy. And actually part of our job is sometimes to work with a strategy which hasn't necessarily answered some of those big strategic questions that an organization would need to ask itself, like what are we here for? And often we have quite a delicate task to play in helping to navigate with our stakeholders, not rewriting the strategy, not rewriting that business strategy, but actually making it translatable, palatable, we sometimes say, as a brand strategy and something that they can communicate not just to their external audiences, but sometimes to their internal audiences as well.
Right.
So I think of a number of projects we've done where one of our questions we ask is, do you understand the new strategy, or what do you know about the new strategy? And the number of times we hear from people, well, we've had some sessions to communicate the new strategy, but we didn't really understand what it was, and no one talks about it anymore. So it's actually really about engaging people in that journey that the organisation is trying to go on.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't do ourselves down as well. So we sell that the palatable articulation of your strategy, which it absolutely is. It's making it understandable, making it more engaging to people, making it land and stick. Something that they can use over and over again, and like you say, understand it, want to be part of it. But that almost isn't going far enough in what that does. So I'm going to go off on a tangent for a minute, right? Okay. So I was thinking, has everybody seen the film Arrival?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that film.
Right, so spoiler alert if you have, right? So the whole thing is, so aliens land and they try to communicate with us. And they communicate with us, and they slowly teach this one scientist how their writing works, okay? And through understanding how their writing works...
slowly.
Yes.
When I think of it as a movie, I actually just remember it as a photograph. It was like almost still is how slow it was. But
yes.
Keep going.
Good point.
But that
Very
works,
good point.
right? Because that's leading to the whole point of the film. Right? So when she understands how their language works, their language is circular, right? So we generally read left to right, other cultures read right to left, some top to bottom, some down up. And how you read those things affects how you see the world. And because they have this kind of circular reading pattern, they have to read everything all at once. It gave them, now here's the science fiction bit, it gives them a leap, but it gives them the ability to see through time, because they can understand the world in all at once at the same time. But that's what brand is doing. It is language helping you see the strategy differently, helping you think about your strategy differently, helping you live your strategy differently.
I think it's about making the strategy manageable.
Yeah.
So people know what part they need to play in helping to deliver that, because not everybody has to deliver everything. And it's a bit like a team, isn't it? You need to know the position that you're playing in for that particular game. It may change, but you know what position you're playing in, how you work with your other team members, and how ultimately you're going to win.
Yeah.
But it's not always about winning. Success is measured in lots of different ways.
Yeah. I like to stick and land. That's a nice phrase. But it seems like that's the time when you're rolling out a 5-year strategy would be one of those situations where an organization realizes we need to get on the front foot with brand. And then there's lots of other situations where it's a reaction to different dynamics that are happening within the organization or externally in the marketplace. So what are some of the best outcomes that you've seen? Well, if it's not, success narrowly defined, maybe broadly defined, but what are some of the best results that you've seen come out of a brand project for either a company that you've worked in, or a client that you've worked with?
So there are lots of great ones that are going to be interspersed around our website, right? About this many million added to your sales pipeline, or increase in awareness by 33%, or fundraising increased by 171%. Those are all real, and the millions of added to the pipeline was 240 million. Those are all real, and those are all great results. But the ones that are really stick in the mind aren't actually the figures. It's when you see the changes happen within the organization. So one of mine is going to be from one of the smaller end of the jobs we did. And it was one of the first ones where I took them through the brand voice process, and was working with the CEO. And he'd come to the brand thing because he wanted to get his team more engaged. He got big ambitions, wanted to grow, and wanted to add this service and that service and get his team signed up to stretching out into those new areas. And through the brand process, it was and involving his team, and then using that stimulus from the team to take back into him and have a different conversation, was able to get him to see they had got a really great team and a really great offer that really wanted to power and grow, but they wanted to do they saw a natural place for them to grow, which was slightly different to where he was imagining, and that helped him pivot his thinking. To be honest, if he'd gone down the path he was thinking about, there was every danger that he was going to actually lose some of his key clients, and it might have taken him back a step before he could grow. And now, but because he went in the direction he did, they've gone on to grow and have multiple offices and have gone on to great things. It was a tiny agency when we first started working with them, now like a national player. But it was all just because he took a moment to stop, think, listen to some other opinions, and come at something with a slightly different way.
Right. Nice. Yeah, that's very gratifying to see.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and I'd agree. We can quote lots of stats about great case studies we've got, but I think sometimes it is the little things. I'm just thinking about a client I've worked with recently. I remember the MD emailing me afterwards to say that working with you guys has affected how we show up, and I thought that's absolutely, that's gold, right? Yeah. That's actually just going through this process, getting to understand about what's the benefit that you're really delivering to your customers. What is this organization really all about? What is it that drives it? Why are they different? Just almost making people walk taller, because they're feeling just more confident in the way that they're expressing what they do. What they do actually hasn't fundamentally changed, just the way that they think about it and understand its place in the world.
I think that's a really good description. And just to add to that, my example is similar as well. Fairly small organisation, but a 50-year-old practice that had really lost its way. So it had a great reputation in the early days. Landscape was getting even more competitive. They were losing staff because they didn't have whatever they needed to retain really good people and really good staff. The senior leadership team were the ones who were going out and trying to win new business because the next generation just simply weren't interested in it. They were out of date, they were out of touch. And what was really important for them is that creativity was at the heart of their organisation. So project started in a brand identity capacity, but we were able to get them to see the benefits of a much broader strategic brand review, and it transformed them as an organisation. We saw people who were apathetic convert to be advocates, and we encouraged the leadership team to give the next generation a platform, so the associates that they were working with, to give them the platform of launching that brand internally. And this renewed sense of confidence that the team had, absolutely about standing taller. And the knock-on effect with that is that you've got a broader team who want to get involved in new business and representing the agency, but you're empowering people to be advocates of that brand. And they started to see the benefits in terms of the opportunities that they were winning and the people that they were retaining within the business.
And we're talking a lot about organizational impacts and results, but actually what's most satisfying about when a brand project really works is then the layer that work beyond that, about the impact, the wider impact. So you were talking about changing the perceptions within an organization. We've gone on to change the way a whole region sees itself. And actually create, a whole different dynamic for a region that went on to make them more confident, more positive about themselves, seen differently by others, which led to more investment, or more tourists, a richer economy.
What are some misconceptions that people have about brand and brand work?
So I've been involved in lots of client projects across 7 years, a real variety of sectors, a real variety of challenges, but it always starts with our discover stage, where we are speaking to people and we're actively listening. And I've been heavily involved in that discover stage and really enjoy it, love speaking to people, maybe because I'm nosy or inquisitive, but I like to understand. And every time I have conducted an interview, the interviewee is always surprised by the breadth of questions that we're asking, because they always make an assumption that all I'm going to talk to them about is the logo and the visual identity. So when you start to explore broader things like, what's the vision of the organisation? How was the strategy created? Who created the strategy? How was it communicated? What's the quality and frequency of internal communications in terms of your progress against the goals and objectives that you're setting? Everybody is always really surprised by the variety of questions that you're asking.
I agree with you, people are surprised. But I think we default too easily to them being surprised by assuming that they think that we're going to ask them about the logo. And actually, I'd like to get into a little bit more why they're surprised. Because all right. Well, let's say that some are surprised by the fact that they think we were just going to talk about the logo. But it's not all of them. Some of them, even those who are quite brand savvy, are surprised by the quality of conversation, about how deep, how introspective it can make them be, and how much they have to really think about what's going on. And I wonder why that is, why we think that is, why are even the brand savvy people surprised by the questioning and where it leads?
I wonder for some, I think that's a great question. I wonder for some if it's just about, and I know this from having spent 20 plus years in client-side or client-side organisations, is you're so focused on execution, hitting targets, hitting your plan, getting things out the door, that it's really rare that you actually get the chance to spend an hour, which is what our one-to-one interviews are normally about, really thinking about your brand. Why are you showing up for work every day? What is it that you're actually achieving for your organisation? Who are the competitors you're worried about? There's some big questions in there that actually a lot of people just don't have time to think about. And coming back to what are some of the benefits of the process? It often forces organisations to actually take time to do it properly, to spend a little bit of time contemplating what it is they're all about, a little bit of that introspection, which you just don't get to do when you're constantly in delivery mode.
And that might be why, even when you're talking to external stakeholders, like not stakeholders within the organisation, but those who just deal with it, who have been willing to give up their time in the first place, and then you get to the end of the conversation and they go, oh, I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. No, I'm thanking you for giving you my time. No, thank you. Do you know what I mean?
How many times have we had that? Just that great response at the end where people say, I didn't really know what to expect, but I really enjoyed that conversation.
Now I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that.
And maybe it is just that natural positive experience of being able to stop and think.
Yes.
Which so many of us have so little time to do.
Right. And kind of what I'm hearing is space and permission, like the time in your schedule, and then the permission to think about questions that are typically taken for granted. As you were saying at the beginning, Adam, that when you're working on a campaign, there's a lot of the brand strategy that's already been formulated, that's unquestioned, and you wanted to get back upstream to what that was. And probably so much of our work environment is dictated and determined by the brand that we live inside of, and is taken for granted 99.5% of the time. So that 0.5% of the time, or 0.1% of the time, where we have the space and the permission to go that far upstream and say, what's really defining our workplace and our mission and who we are, and have a conversation about that. I can imagine how refreshing that would be. From your experience with standout work, like what made that work? What, if you just pick in your own memory one or two highlights and say, oh, this is what really made that click, what would those things be?
So I'm going to pick out three which I think are interrelated. So one is listening. We spend a lot of time listening. The second is insight, and the insight comes from the listening. And the third is when you can play something back to your client that just immediately clicks. And that's because you've done the listening and you've done the insight. So for me, those three things are the things that suddenly you go, we've got something amazing here.
Right. It's interesting because the two things that you mentioned are things that not everybody would think of in a branding or kind of more of the changing the logo.
Yeah,
but
it's not the measure of a great brand project is not a great logo.
Mm-hmm.
We can do great logos, of course, but the measure is that it's that moment of, it's almost like the scales lifting from a client's eyes, where they suddenly go, wow, that's what we're really all about,
right,
all of the time, and you've helped us define it.
Nice.
We often say to clients, our expertise is in the listening and the process and the pulling things out and the creating, but we're using those skills to actually pull out from within them what they're really all about. We're not imposing the answer, we're pulling it out of them.
Nice. Excellent.
And those questions that we ask allow us to explore different things with the different stakeholders that we're speaking to. We don't have a set of 20 questions. We ask the same questions over and over again. As Andrew said, it's active listening. So it's about probing and really understanding. And again, there have been lots of clients when we've presented our findings and our insights who are thrilled at how quickly we have understood their organisation in a very short period of time.
But that's where you're going to come back to what your question, which was the key traits of a great transformational brand project, right?
Yeah.
So we're the same every time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not our work is always good.
Mm-hmm.
We always do good branding projects, but the key traits of a great transformational project isn't going to be us because we're the same every time. It's the what's on the other side. It's who's working with us. So and that breaks down to what's the opportunity. So what is there that can be fixed or can be achieved? What's their openness and appetite for seizing that opportunity, and then willingness to be collaborative and open and really work with us on it.
Right.
So those are the things that are going to really make the difference between a good brand project and a great brand project.
Yeah.
And that latter thing that you mentioned about working with us just makes an enormous difference.
Mm-hmm. And so we've got both aspects. Like from our side, what makes a great project is going in without an answer. A little bit different than a templated approach. It's going in and teasing things out, exploring different routes and avenues, and then discovering an answer along the way, which it sounds like you couldn't probably accomplish if you had a really road-mapped down to each question that you were going to ask. So a little bit of going in with that open-minded.
A great holiday. Think about a great holiday, right? A great holiday. you know your destination, you know how you're going to get there.
Depends on if you're asking me or my wife.
Well,
That's
I was going to say, you've got to build in a certain amount of spontaneity, right? You've got to build in the opportunity.
I would agree with
for
that.
for adventure.
Yes. And then also the knowing that this is a big opportunity and working together collaboratively seems like on the client side what makes it all come together really powerfully. Well, great. Thanks for your time and your responses. And this is the first of many, so looking forward to doing this again soon. And if you'd like to follow the podcast, please do subscribe. We'll be releasing more episodes. And thanks for listening.